The atmosphere within the Grand Synod of the Ethelgard was not merely air. It was a pressurized mixture of incense, recycled oxygen, and the heavy, crushing weight of 10,000 years of stagnancy. The chamber itself was a masterpiece of architectural paranoia, a cavernous dome hewn from the living rock of the planet's crust, reinforced with latticework alloys that shimmered with a dull, bronze luminescence. Here, deep beneath the surface of the capital world, the silence was usually absolute, a testament to the order and stability that the Ethelgard Empire imposed upon the known galaxy. But today, the silence was brittle, fractured by the rhythmic, frantic pulsing of the sensory nodes embedded in the obsidian table that dominated the room. High Justicar Vallis stared at the holographic projection hovering above the surface, his primary ocular clusters narrowing in a mixture of biological disbelief and intellectual offense. The data streaming before him was an insult to the laws of physics as laid down by the progenitors. It was a mathematical heresy. The projection showed a sector of space that the Empire had long designated as the Null Zone, a region of hyperspatial turbulence and gravitational shear so intense that even light seemed to weep as it tried to escape. It was a graveyard of stars, a place where the fabric of reality thinned and tore, leading only to the howling madness of the unmade void. Nothing existed there. Nothing could exist there. It was the edge of the map, the definition of the impossible, and yet there was a signal. It was faint, barely rising above the background static of cosmic radiation, but it was rhythmic, it was structured, it was artificial. Vallis felt a tremor ripple through his carapace, an involuntary reaction to the cognitive dissonance tearing at his mind. He looked up, scanning the faces of the other council members. They were statues of dread. Archtechnocrat Kalen, whose cybernetic augmentations usually hummed with the cool logic of pure calculation, looked as though he were processing a fatal error. His metallic fingers twitched against the stone of the table, tapping out a sequence of denial. Matriarch Alara, representing the biological castes, had turned a pale, sickly shade of violet, her gills fluttering rapidly as she struggled to oxygenate her blood against the rising tide of panic. They all saw it. They all denied it. The signal was moving. It was not a static beacon left by some dead civilization. It was a trajectory. Something was navigating the Null Zone. Something was swimming through the gravitational riptides that should have crushed a dreadnought into a singularity the size of an atom. "It is a sensor ghost," Kalen finally whispered, his voice synthesized and hollow, stripping the statement of any conviction. "It must be. The long-range arrays have not been recalibrated since the last cycle. The thermal variations in the Null Zone are mimicking an engine signature. It is a phantom echo, a trick of the light." Vallis wanted to believe him. He wanted to close his eyes, order the calibration teams to be executed for their incompetence, and return to the comfortable, slow decay of his empire. But he was a high Justicar because he understood the nature of threats, and he knew that the universe rarely offered comfortable lies when a hard truth was available. He reached out, his clawed hand passing through the hologram, manipulating the view to zoom in on the vector. The resolution sharpened. The fuzz of static cleared slightly, revealing a coherent mass. It was not a natural formation. It possessed geometry, hard lines, acute angles, a defiance of the fluid, organic shapes that the Ethelgard favored. "A sensor ghost does not decelerate," Vallis said, his voice deep and resonating like grinding stones. "A phantom echo does not adjust its pitch and yaw to ride the gravitational waves of a collapsing neutron star. Look at the telemetry, Kalen, look at it." He gestured violently at the scrolling numbers. "The object is correcting its course. It is compensating for the shear. It is surfing the event horizon." A collective gasp, sounding like the hiss of escaping steam, went around the table. To surf an event horizon was a poetic absurdity. It was suicide. The gravitational gradients alone would spaghettify a biological crew and tear the molecular bonds of any known alloy. Yet the object persisted. It was emerging from the cloud of radiation, dragging the fire of the accretion disk with it like a cloak of burning stardust. "This is an invasion," General Thrax growled, his armored bulk shifting as he leaned forward. Thrax saw the universe through the lens of conflict. To him, the unknown was merely a target he had not yet destroyed. "They utilize a cloaking technology or a shielding paradigm we do not understand. They have flanked the Maginot line of the border sectors by traversing the untraversable. We must scramble the Grand Fleet. We must saturate the exit vector with antimatter mines. If it bleeds, we kill it. If it is a machine, we break it." Vallis looked at the general with a mixture of pity and frustration. The military mind was a hammer, and it saw every problem as a nail. But this was not a nail. This was a lightning bolt striking from a clear blue sky. "With what time, General?" Alara asked, her voice trembling but gaining strength as her analytical mind took over. Look at the velocity. They are not moving at conventional superluminal speeds. They are not in warp. They are sliding. The space around them is contracting. They will be at the perimeter buoy in less than a standard microcycle. By the time your fleet powers their reactors, this thing will be knocking on the door of the inner systems. The realization hit them all simultaneously. The null zone was not just a barrier. It was a distance. A vast, insurmountable distance that dictated the geography of their civilization. If someone could cross it, if someone could turn that wall into a door, then the Ethelgard were no longer the masters of a secure domain. They were indigenous tribesmen watching a galleon emerge from a hurricane they thought was the end of the world. Identify it, Valus commanded, his tone leaving no room for failure. Scan the hull configuration, cross-reference with the archives of the lost. Is it a remnant vessel, a progenitor sleeper ship? Kalen's fingers flew across his interface, his cybernetic eyes glowing with high-bandwidth data streams. The room held its breath. The hologram shifted, resolving into a wireframe model as the deep space sensors finally pierced the interference of the null zone. The ship that appeared was ugly. That was the first thought that struck Valus. It lacked the grace of Ethelgardian solar sailors or the intimidating sleekness of their warships. It was a blocky utilitarian construct, a scarred brick of metal scarred by cosmic abuse. It was asymmetrical, covered in exposed piping, radiator fins that glowed white-hot, and antennae that bristled like the quills of a frightened animal. It looked less like a spaceship and more like a refinery that had been ripped from the ground and thrown into the heavens. No match in the archives, Kalen reported, his voice laced with genuine confusion. The alloy composition is primitive, iron, titanium. Carbon composites, there is no living metal, no neutronium weave. By all metrics, the hull should have collapsed under the pressure of the null zone. It is holding together through structural redundancy and en masse excessive mass. It is a brute force object. Kalen paused, a data packet unraveling before him. Wait, I'm detecting biological signs, massive amounts of them, thousands, but they are dormant. No, they are waking, and the energy signature of the drive core, it defies the standard model. It is not tapping into the 0 point. It is a controlled fusion reaction, but unstable, wildly unstable. It is a contained explosion. Controlled fusion? Thrax scoffed. That is primitive technology. A civilization that burns atoms to move should not be able to cross the street, let alone the null zone. This is a deception. It is not a deception, Valus said quietly, watching the telemetry. It is a paradox. They use primitive materials to achieve impossible results. They are not bending the rules, they are breaking them with a rock. The ship was closer now. The holographic display showed it decelerating, the massive engines flaring blue-white, shedding velocity with a violence that sent gravitational ripples through the local scanners. It was entering real space, shedding the exotic particles of the null zone. It hung there, a dark, scarred monolith against the backdrop of stars, silent, imposing, and utterly terrifying in its existence. They are hailing us, Kalen said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Broadband transmission, omnidirectional. It is not encrypted, it is analog. Analog? Alara blinked. Audio? Yes, and video, primitive raster scan. Put it on the main viewer, Valus ordered. Let us see the faces of the ghosts. The main view screen, a crystalline wall usually reserved for grand announcements or star charts, flickered. Static washed across it, snow and noise, the visual language of a technology the Ethelgard had surpassed 5,000 years ago. Then the image stabilized. The room fell into a silence deeper than the one before. They expected monsters. They expected energy beings or cybernetic horrors or the divine perfection of the progenitors. What they saw was a creature that looked alarmingly fragile. It sat in a chair that looked worn, surrounded by physical switches and screens that glowed with amber text. The creature had soft skin, pale and unarmored. It had tufts of hair on its head and face, 2 eyes, binocular vision scanning a console. It wore a uniform of dark blue fabric unadorned by power armor or ceremonial plating. It looked tired. There were arc circles under its eyes, and a cup of steaming liquid sat precariously close to the control board. The creature looked up, staring directly into the camera. It didn't roar. It didn't proclaim its dominance. It didn't demand surrender. It sighed, reached for the cup, took a sip, and then spoke. The universal translator, usually instant, took a few seconds to parse the archaic linguistic structure. This is Captain Elias Thorne of the United Earth Starship * Indomitable. The voice came through, weary but steady. To any receiving stations in this sector, we apologize for the noise. Our exit vector was a little rougher than the math predicted. We're not looking for trouble, we're just looking requesting permission to stabilize orbit and conduct repairs. Our port nacelle is throwing a fit, and honestly, we're all a bit space-sick. Valis stared at the screen. The creature, this human, was apologizing. It had just torn a hole through the most dangerous region of the galaxy, surviving forces that would kill a god in a ship made of welded scrap, and it was apologizing for the noise. United Earth, Alara repeated, tasting the words. They are from Earth, where is that? Uncharted, Kalen replied, his processors running hot. Extrapolating from their trajectory, they came from the other side of the null zone, the dead quadrant. The region we deemed uninhabitable due to resource scarcity and high radiation. They came from the wasteland, Valis murmured, and they survived. Captain Thorne, Valis spoke, his voice projected across the void to the alien vessel. He decided to test them, to push. You have entered the sovereign space of the Ethelgard Empire. You have traversed the forbidden void. Your presence here is a violation of natural law. State your intent immediately, or you will be fired upon. On the screen, the human captain didn't flinch. He didn't look terrified. He looked disappointed. He tapped a few buttons on his console. Sovereign space, right? Look, we didn't know the neighborhood was occupied. As for the forbidden void, we just call it the long dark. And we didn't violate natural law, we just found a loophole. As for firing upon us, Thorne leaned forward, his expression hardening slightly. It wasn't aggression, it was the look of a parent dealing with a tantrum. I wouldn't recommend that. My deflector shields are currently tuned to withstand the shearing force of a singularity. If you fire plasma at us, it's just going to bounce off and annoy the engineers. We really don't want to start an incident. We're explorers, let's talk. Explorers, Thrax sneered. They are lying. No one explores the null zone. You survive it or you avoid it. Hold fire, Valis ordered, raising a hand. They are not powering weapons. Kalen, scan them again. Deep scan. I want to know what is inside that ship. Scanning, Kalen paused. Hi, Justicar, the interior of the ship. It is not just crew. I am detecting cryobays, seeds, DNA banks, cultural archives. This is not a warship. It is not a scout. Kalen looked up, his eyes wide. It is a lifeboat or an ark. The tension in the room shifted. A lifeboat implied a disaster. An ark implied a hope for the future. Valis looked back at the human captain. Captain Thorne, you claim to be explorers. Yet your vessel carries the seeds of a civilization. Why have you crossed the void? What are you running from? Thorne's expression softened. A shadow passed over his face, a look of ancient, deep sadness that resonated even across the species barrier. We're not running from anything, High Justicar, not anymore. We're running asterisk to asterisk. We spent 3 centuries in that dark, cold soup you call a void, 3 centuries of isolation. We learned that the universe is big and cold and mostly empty. But we also learned that if you want to find the light, you have to carry it with you. He paused. We're here because we did the math. The probability of us being alone was high. The probability of us surviving was low, but we're humans. We don't like those odds, so we changed them. Change the odds, Alara asked. How? By refusing to die, Thorne said simply. May we come aboard? It's better if we explain face to face. And do you have coffee? We ran out 6 months ago. The shuttle that detached from the asterisk Indomitable was as blocky and scarred as the mothership. It approached the pristine, shimmering docking bay of the Ethelgard Citadel like a rusty tugboat entering a palace. Valis stood at the airlock, flanked by his honor guard, hulking warriors in ceramic plate armor holding energized halberds. Thrax was there, his hand hovering near his sidearm. Alara stood slightly behind, her curiosity warring with her fear. The airlock hissed. Steam vented. The heavy mechanical clank of the locking clamps echoed through the bay, a jarring sound against the harmonic hum of Ethelgard technology. The door groaned open. Out stepped 5 humans. They were short compared to the Ethelgard. They lacked natural armor. Their skin looked soft, easily punctured. They wore simple uniforms, functional and clean. Captain Thorne led them, looking even more tired in person than he had on the screen. He walked with a slight limp. Behind him were 2 scientists carrying tablets and 2 soldiers who held their rifles not at the ready but slung casually across their chests. This was a statement. We do not fear you. Or perhaps, if we fight, we have already lost, so why posture? Valis towered over Thorne. He extended his neck, his sensory tendrils tasting the air around the human. You are small, Valis said, the words slipping out before he could filter them. Thorne smiled. It was a baring of teeth, which in many cultures was a threat, but here it seemed disarming. Dense gravity world, Thorne shrugged, keeps us compact. You must be High Justicar Valis. Thank you for not vaporizing us. The option remains on the table, Thrax grunted. Thorne glanced at the general. I appreciate the honesty. Honesty is good, saves time. He looked around the docking bay, taking in the soaring arches, the floating lights, the impossible cleanliness. Nice place, very symmetric. Follow me, Valis said. The council awaits. The walk to the council chamber was a study in contrasts. The humans walked with a heavy, purposeful gait, their boots striking the floor with a solid thud. The Ethelguard glided. The humans looked at everything, the architecture, the guards, the technology, with eyes that analyzed, deconstructed, and understood. They were not cowed by the grandeur, they were measuring it. Inside the chamber, the humans were seated at the center. The council loomed over them on raised daises. It was an interrogation setup designed to intimidate. Thorn leaned back in his chair, seemingly immune to the psychological warfare. "Explain," Valis began. "Your technology, your drive." "Our scientists say it is impossible. The energy requirements to traverse the null zone are infinite. You cannot carry enough fuel." One of the human scientists, a woman with graying hair and sharp eyes, stood up. "Dr. Eris Thorn," she introduced herself. "Chief engineer, you're right. In a conventional sense, the energy required is infinite. If you try to push through the null zone, the universe pushes back. Newton's third law on a cosmic scale, so we didn't push." "Then how?" Kalen demanded. "You arrived." "We fell," Eris said. "We created a localized bubble of high entropy at the bow of the ship and a pocket of low entropy at the stern. We didn't move the ship. We convinced the universe that the ship would be statistically more likely to exist 1,000 kilometers forward than where it was. We rode a wave of probability. We didn't burn fuel to move. We burned fuel to collapse the wave function continuously. We cheated." "Cheated?" Kalen's logic processors stalled. "You gambled your existence on quantum probability for 300 years. Every microsecond," Eris nodded. "If the math was off by a decimal point, we would have materialized inside a star or simply ceased to exist, but we have good computers and better pilots." "That is madness," Alara whispered. "That is not science, that is faith." "It's stubbornness," Captain Thorn corrected. "We found the null zone. We realized it wasn't a wall, it was a filter, a test. Whatever built the galaxy, or whatever left the other civilizations behind, put that barrier there to keep the timid out, or maybe to keep something in. We didn't care. We were alone in our sector. We ran out of resources. We had a choice, starve in the dark or risk the impossible. We chose the risk." "You speak of isolation," Valis said. "Were there no others in your sector?" Thorn's face darkened. The playful demeanor vanished, replaced by the cold, hard look of a survivor. "There were. Once. We found their ruins. Whatever is in the null zone, it didn't stay there. It reaches out, it harvests. We call them the harvesters. They strip systems of energy. They eat stars. They ate our neighbors. They were coming for us." The council went still. The harvesters, the Ethelguard had myths of the star eaters, legends from the time before the Empire. They were dismissed as primitive folklore. "You are claiming," Thrax said slowly, "that you fled a cosmic predator." "We didn't flee," Thorn said, his voice dropping an octave. "We led them away. That's why we entered the null zone. The harvesters track energy signatures, high-output fusion antimatter, 0 point. They feed on advanced civilizations. We realized that if we stayed, Earth would fall. So we built the indomitable asterisk. We made it the loudest, brightest, most appetizing energy source in the sector. We turned it into a lure. And then we dove into the one place we knew they hesitated to go." Valis felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. You used yourselves as bait to save your homeworld." "It worked," Thorn said. "They followed us into the null zone, and the null zone killed them. Their biology or technology couldn't handle the probability shear. They need order to exist. They feed on structure. The null zone is chaos. We survived because we are adaptable. They died because they were rigid." "But you said you were explorers," Valis said. "We are now," Thorn replied. "The harvesters are dead, at least the fleet that chased us, but we know there are more. We came out the other side to find you." He looked around the room. "You have a beautiful civilization here, orderly, structured, high-energy output." The implication hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "You are saying," Alara breathed, "that we are food." "We are saying," Thorn said, "that you are visible. You are a bonfire in a dark forest, and the wolves are watching." "This is a trick," Thrax roared, standing up. "A ploy to weaken our resolve. You bring tales of monsters to make us cowards." "I bring you data," Thorn said calmly. He gestured to Eris, who placed a small crystal drive on the central table. "This is the tactical analysis of the harvester fleet, their shield frequencies, their hull composition, their feeding cycles. And this," he tapped the drive again, "is the coordinates of the main harvester hive. It's not in the dead quadrant. It's not in the null zone." The holographic map expanded. A red dot pulsed. It was on the edge of the Ethelguard space in a sector thought to be empty. "They are already here," Thorn said. "Dormant, waiting for you to reach a certain energy threshold. We detected their wake-up signal when we exited the zone. That's why we hailed you. That's why we didn't hide. We didn't come to invade you. We came to warn you." Valis looked at the small, soft human. He looked at the primitive ship on the screen. He realized then that he had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of strength. The Ethelguard built walls. They built fortresses. They believed that strength was static, unmoving, unbreakable. But these humans, they believed strength was movement. It was the ability to walk into the fire and come out the other side. They had sacrificed themselves, thrown themselves into hell to save a home they might never see again. And now, having survived hell, they were trying to save strangers. "Why?" Valis asked. "Why warn us? We almost fired on you. We are not your kin." Thorn looked at Valis, and for the first time he smiled a genuine, warm smile. "Because in the null zone, when the darkness is total, you realize that the only thing that matters is that you're not alone. We're humans, high justicar, we pack bond. You're alive, you're thinking, you're dreaming. That makes you us, and we don't let family get eaten." The alarm klaxons shattered the moment. Red light bathed the chamber. "Proximity alert!" Kalen screamed, his composure finally breaking. "Massive hyperspace rupture. Sector 7, multiple contacts. They are by the progenitors, they are moon-sized." The hologram shifted. The red dot had multiplied. A swarm of darkness was blotting out the stars on the edge of the map. The harvesters had awoken. "They sensed the asterisk, indomitable asterisk," Thorn said, standing up. He didn't look afraid. He looked focused. "We rang the dinner bell. I'm sorry about that, but at least now you know where to shoot." "Our fleets are out of position," Thrax shouted. "It will take cycles to mobilize." "We can buy you time," Thorn said. He tapped his comms badge. "Bridge, this is Thorn. Spin up the probability drive. Disengage safety interlocks." "Captain," Valis asked, "what are you doing?" "We're going to be Allure again," Thorn said. "We're going to jump right into the middle of them and make a lot of noise. We'll scramble their sensors, invert their local gravity. It'll drive them crazy. They'll focus on us." "That is suicide," Alara cried out. "You said your ship is damaged." "It's always damaged," Thorn said. "She likes it that way." He looked at Valis. "Get your fleet ready. We'll hold them for 10 minutes, maybe 15, make them count." The humans turned to leave. Valis watched them go. He saw the limp in Thorn's walk, the gray in Aris's hair. They were so fragile, and yet they were the most formidable things he had ever seen. "Wait," Valis boomed. Thorn stopped. "You will not go alone," Valis said. He looked at Thrax. "General, the Honor Guard squadron is in orbit. Are they combat ready?" "They are ceremonial," Thrax stammered. "But they are armed." "Launch them," Valis ordered, "and link our tactical grid to the asterisk, indomitable asterisk. Kalen, give the humans access to the point defense network. If they are going to be the anvil, we will be the hammer." Thorn looked back at Valis. He nodded, a slow, respectful nod. "Let's make some noise, High Justicar." The battle that followed was not recorded in the Ethelgard archives as a military engagement. It was recorded as a miracle. The indomitable asterisk, a brick of primitive metal, danced through. A harvester swarmed like a chaotic electron. It flickered in and out of existence, its probability drive causing the massive, organic harvester ships to fire upon themselves or grasp at empty space. The Ethelgard Honor Guard, inspired by the madness of the humans, flew with a reckless abandon they had never known, weaving through the crossfire, delivering antimatter payloads into the exposed vents of the enemy. On the Council view screen, Valis watched the asterisk indomitable take hit after hit. Armor plates boiled away. Atmosphere vented in crystal plumes, but it kept moving. It kept firing its kinetic cannons. Slugs of tungsten accelerated to relativistic speeds, shattering the crystalline hulls of the enemy. It was a brawl. It was ugly, brutal, and devoid of elegance, and it was winning. When the Grand Fleet finally arrived, dropping out of warp with the fury of 1,000 suns, the Harvester swarm was in disarray. The Ethelgard dreadnoughts swept through the confused enemy like a scythe. It was a slaughter. The ancient predators used to prey that cowered and hid had no answer for prey that bit back. As the debris field settled, Valis hailed the asterisk, indomitable asterisk. The human ship was a wreck. It was drifting, leaking, fires burning in multiple sections. "Captain Thorn," Valis said, his voice thick with emotion. "Status." There was a long pause, then a crackle of static. "We are Koff, we're here." Thorn's voice came through, weak but alive. "Main drive is fused. Life support is on backup. We're leaking air, but we're still floating." "We are sending shuttles," Valis said. "Medical teams, engineers, you will be assisted." "Appreciate it," Thorn wheezed. "Hey, Valis." "Yes, Captain. Did we get them?" "We got them," Valis said. "All of them." "Good, that's good." Weeks later, the repairs to the asterisk Indomitable were complete. The Ethelgard engineers had worked alongside the humans, fusing advanced nanotechnology with the rugged human designs. The ship was now a hybrid, a testament to the alliance that had been forged in fire. It was still ugly, but it hummed with a new power. Valis stood with Thorn in the docking bay. The human looked better rested, though the sadness in his eyes never fully left. "You are leaving," Valis stated. "We have to," Thorn said. "Earth is still out there. We have to go back. Tell them it's safe. Tell them the path is open. We have to bring the rest of us here." "The null zone is still dangerous," Valis warned. "We know the way now," Thorn smiled. And besides, we have new upgrades. Thank Kalen for the singularity stabilizer. It's going to make the trip a lot smoother. Captain, Valis said, hesitating. He struggled with the concepts that had been challenging his worldview since the humans arrived. Your species, you are contradictory. You are logical yet reckless. You are peaceful yet violent. You are small yet vast. What are you? Thorn looked at the ship, then out at the stars through the force field. We're the middle children of history, Valis. Born too late to explore the Earth, born too early to explore the universe, so we decided to force the issue. We're the ones who don't accept impossible as an answer. We're the ship that shouldn't exist but does. He extended his hand. Valis, knowing the custom now, reached out with his clawed gauntlet and grasped the small, soft hand. He felt the heat, the pulse, the fragile life that burned with such intensity. When you return, Valis said, you will not be greeted with guns. The Ethelgard remembers. We'll hold you to that, Thorn said. He turned and walked up the ramp. As the Asterisk Indomitable powered up, its engines glowing with a mix of human fusion blue and Ethelgard violet, Valis returned to the observation deck. He watched the ship move away from the station, orienting itself toward the null zone. They are engaging the drive, Kalen reported. Readings are stable, paradoxically stable. The ship accelerated, space around it twisted, light bending, reality groaning under the weight of the probability manipulation. And then, with a flash that was not light but the absence of it, the ship vanished. It didn't warp, it simply ceased to be asterisk here and started to be their asterisk. They are gone, Alara said softly. No, Valis corrected, looking at the tactical map where the sector of Earth, the sector of the new allies, was now marked in gold. They have just begun. He looked at the council. The fear was gone. The stagnation was broken. The universe was larger, scarier, and more dangerous than they had believed for 10,000 years. There were monsters in the dark. But as Valis looked at the empty space where the human ship had been, he felt a strange sensation in his chests. A feeling the Ethelgard had bred out of themselves eons ago. Hope. Because now the monsters were not the only things hunting in the dark. The humans were there too. And God help anything that stood in their way. Valis turned back to the table, his eyes gleaming. Kalen, bring up the schematics for the human probability drive. We have work to do. If our allies can surf the void on a prayer and a brick, surely we can learn to swim. The Council of the Ethelgard, for the first time in millennia, began to argue not about how to preserve the past, but how to build the future. The silence of the tomb was replaced by the noise of industry, of debate, of life. The ship that shouldn't exist had left, but it had left behind the most dangerous contagion of all, the idea that the impossible was merely a suggestion, and the galaxy would never be the same.